What if the world as we know it, everything, simply hit the reset button? Not a disaster, not an alien invasion, but a complete wipe and reshuffle of the physical and human landscape. You live in a world defined by borders, by empires that rose and fell, by people grouped into races, all shaped by continents and rivers that seem ancient and unmoving. But what if those continents were never in the places they are today? What if the very shape of the land we stand on, the climate we experience, and the people we share it with were all fundamentally different? If Earth were to restart from scratch, same planet, same physics, but a completely blank slate, the world you know would vanish. The lines on the map, the global powers, even the very faces of humanity, all would be replaced by something utterly unrecognizable. This isn't just a fantasy, it's a deep dive into the cosmic lottery that shaped our reality, and it holds a mirror up to everything we think we know. Let's begin with the very foundation beneath our feet, the land itself. The continents you see on any map, those familiar shapes of North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and Antarctica, they're not permanent fixtures. They're just one fleeting arrangement in Earth's grand, slow dance. Tectonic plates, these enormous pieces of our planet's crust, are constantly in motion. They glide, they crash, they dive beneath each other, all at roughly the speed your fingernails grow. It's imperceptible to us, but given enough time, millions upon millions of years, Earth reshuffles itself entirely. Imagine this. Scientists predict that about 250 million years from now, a new supercontinent will form, something they've dubbed Amasia. In this future, Asia could collide with North America, and the Arctic Ocean, that vast icy expanse, might disappear altogether, squeezed out of existence. But here's the real mind-bender. What if the global reset happened with a completely different tectonic starting point? What if the initial configuration of these plates was wildly different? In that scenario, the continents wouldn't just be slightly altered, they could be unrecognizable. The Mediterranean Sea, that historic cradle of civilization, might never form at all. Africa, in our timeline, broke away from South America to create the Atlantic Ocean. But what if they never separated, or only partially, leaving a vast, connected landmass? The Amazon River, the lifeblood of a massive rainforest, might instead flow into an enormous inland sea, creating a completely different ecosystem. And why does this matter so much? Because every single great civilization in human history has been intrinsically tied to the land, especially its rivers. Think about it. The ancient Egyptians flourished along the Nile, the Mesopotamians between the Tigris and Euphrates, the Chinese dynasties along the Yangtze. Rivers are highways. They're sources of fresh water for farming, and they create fertile floodplains. Change the continents, and you reroute every major river on the planet. You shift the areas of rich, life-giving soil. You alter the entire climate and rainfall patterns across vast regions. In a restarted world, the most fertile land, capable of sustaining massive populations and early agriculture, might be located in a place that today is deep beneath the waves. The richest soils could exist in a region that, in our current geography, doesn't exist at all, or is buried under ice or desert. The very potential for civilization would be redrawn by geology, dictating where humanity would first gather, grow, and eventually build. Now, let's turn to something even more deeply woven into our societies, something we often mistake for fixed biology: race. This is where the thought experiment gets truly fascinating. and perhaps a little uncomfortable for some. Race, as we commonly understand it, isn't some unchanging biological blueprint. It is, in fact, a story written by geography, by the silent forces of sunlight, by the epic journeys of human migration, and by the long stretches of isolation that allowed certain traits to become common in specific groups. The pigmentation of your skin, the very color that helps define what we call race, isn't random. It evolved over tens of thousands of years because your ancestors lived in a particular climate and were exposed to specific environmental pressures. If your ancestors lived near the equator, where the sun beats down with intense ultraviolet UV radiation, dark skin evolved as a natural sunscreen, protecting against DNA damage and folate depletion. Conversely, if your ancestors migrated to northern latitudes, where sunlight is scarce for much of the year, lighter skin evolved. Why? To absorb what little UV radiation was available, which is crucial for the production of vitamin D, essential for bone health and immune function. So, here's the profound implication. In a restarted world, if the continents shifted dramatically, the equator lines would shift along with them. The global maps of UV exposure would be completely different. Populations that happened to settle near a new, scorching equator would, over tens of thousands of years, inevitably develop darker pigmentation, regardless of who their distant ancestors were in the original timeline. Similarly, those who ventured into the newly frigid, low sunlight regions would gradually evolve lighter skin. What this means is truly revolutionary. Race, with all its fraught history and societal implications, is not destiny. It is literally geography, written in the complex chemistry of melanin in our skin. The physical traits we associate with African features, for example, might emerge in people living on a new continent formed in the middle of a reshaped Pacific Ocean. What we categorize as Asian features, like epicanthic folds or certain hair textures, might become common in tribes settling around a completely different mountain range or river system. The categories and labels we've constructed, the very distinctions over which we've fought countless wars, those ingrained ideas about who belongs where, based on appearance, they wouldn't even exist in the same way. The entire tapestry of human appearance would be rewoven by the environment, showing us just how fluid and circumstantial our current understanding of human diversity truly is. Now for the question that probably sparks in everyone's mind when we talk about a world reset: who takes the lead? Who rises to dominance? Who builds the first great empire, invents complex tools, or develops a devastating new technology like gunpowder? Who ultimately crosses vast new oceans and establishes colonies? To even begin answering this, we have to look at our own history. And perhaps no one has articulated this better than Jared Diamond in his groundbreaking book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. Diamond argued with compelling evidence that the rise of Western power and the dominance of Eurasian civilizations wasn't about some inherent intelligence or cultural superiority. It was overwhelmingly about geography. Eurasia, that massive landmass stretching from Europe to Asia, was simply dealt a better hand in the geographic lottery. Consider its advantages. Eurasia had an abundance of animals that could be domesticated, like horses, cattle, pigs, and sheep, which provided labor, food, clothing, and transportation. It had wild crops like wheat and barley that were easily cultivated and stored, allowing for agricultural surpluses. Crucially, it had an east-west axis, meaning that civilizations could spread new technologies, crops, and domesticated animals across vast distances, without encountering significant climate changes. This ease of diffusion gave Eurasia an unparalleled advantage in developing complex societies, specialized labor, and eventually the tools of conquest. Change the map, and you change all of this. In a restarted world, without the specific geographical advantages that powered Eurasia's rise, the playing field is completely different. The first civilization to develop agriculture might not appear in the fertile crescent of our history. What if it emerges in what we today call Antarctica? If that continent were positioned closer to a new equator, blessed with rich volcanic soils and abundant rainfall? The first empire might speak a language that sounds nothing like anything in human history, forged in valleys we can't even imagine. The crucial discovery of gunpowder or metallurgy could happen on a continent that doesn't even have a name yet, born from resources we haven't identified. And colonization? Yes, it would still happen. History shows us that power, once accumulated, rarely stays put. It expands, pushing into vacuums, seeking resources and dominance. But the roles of colonizer and colonized would be entirely reshuffled. They wouldn't be defined by today's races or cultures. Instead, they would be determined by pure geographical luck. Who happened to settle near the most domesticable animals, who found the most productive crops, and who had easy access to those vital east-west routes for spreading innovation. This is the uncomfortable yet powerful truth that a complete global reset reveals human dominance, the rise and fall of empires, the very hierarchies that have shaped our world, are not tests of inherent human superiority. They are, at their core, a lottery of geography, a cosmic roll of the dice. So, what would this brand new world order look like? Who would be the dominant superpower, the cultural hegemon, the economic powerhouse? Imagine this: a civilization rising from a newly formed, incredibly fertile continent, perhaps one situated near what is now the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Their language would become the world's lingua franca for business, science, and diplomacy, much like English is today. Not because English is inherently superior or more logical, but because Britain happened to industrialize first, build a powerful navy, and then establish a vast global empire. This new language would be spread by trade, technology, and yes, by conquest. The new superpowers, wherever they emerged, would likely be defined by three critical factors, much as they are today, but applied to a different planetary canvas. First, proximity to resources. This is fundamental. Oil, natural gas, rare earth minerals essential for technology, and most critically, fresh water. Control over these vital resources gives any civilization immense leverage. Whoever possesses or can easily access these foundational elements is in a position to dictate terms. The world's first great power might emerge from a region rich in easily accessible iron ore, timber, or a unique energy source we don't even have a name for. Second, population density and coordination. China, in our timeline, didn't become a superpower by accident. Its sheer scale, coupled with its ability to organize and mobilize vast populations, gave it immense power. A civilization that can effectively coordinate millions of people across shared infrastructure, that can build massive armies, embark on grand construction projects, or innovate at scale, will always have a structural advantage over smaller, more fragmented tribes or city-states, no matter how brilliant those smaller groups might be. Numbers and organization matter. 3. Access to oceans. Every great empire in human history was a maritime power, or controlled key land routes. In the reset world, whoever sits at the intersection of the major trade routes becomes the toll booth of civilization. And here's the haunting part, the part that should sit with you long after this video ends. The countries that dominate our world today, the United States, China, the former European empires, none of them were inevitable. None of them were destined. They were the products of geography, climate, and random chance, compounded over centuries. In a restarted world, it might be a civilization rising from what is now the Sahara, if the Sahara had different rainfall patterns. It might be a people from what we call the Indian Ocean, if the tectonic layout gave them easier coastal access. It might be the descendants of people who are today marginalized, oppressed, or erased from mainstream history. The reset doesn't just change the map, it changes who gets to write history. The world didn't have to be this way. Every empire you've been told was natural. It wasn't. Every racial hierarchy you've ever been taught was permanent. It isn't. Every nation you believe is powerful because it deserves to be. It got lucky. Or the thought experiment of a restarted Earth is really a mirror. It shows us that what we've built is extraordinary and fragile, that the structures of power we've inherited are not laws of nature, but consequences of chance. And if that's true, if the world could have gone 100 different ways, then the future isn't fixed either. The reset has already happened. It just happens slowly, and we're living inside it. If this made you think, share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment. I want to know, in your restarted world, who rises to power? See you in the next one.